watching Sun TV, broadcasting to the world from studios in Providenciales, in the beautiful by nature Turks and Caicos Islands. Sun TV, your source for real news as it happens.
Premier Dr. Rufus Ewing presented a strong case for the delay in the introduction of value-added tax for at least 1 year when he met with UK Minister for Overseas Territories, Mark Simmons, who was in the Turks and Caicos Islands, for the official opening of Parliament on Wednesday, November 28th. While Minister Simmons said he was not quite prepared to delay the implementation of VAT beyond April 1st, 2013, Premier Ewing held his ground and maintained that his government would be able to formulate economic and financial policies which would ensure that there would be no need to impose the controversial tax. The issue of VAT was the major topic when Simmons, Governor Rick Todd, and Premier Ewing held a press conference at the Regent Palms Hotel in Grace Bay on Tuesday, November 27th. Because of the importance of this issue of VAT and its implications for the TCI as a whole, as a public service, Sun TV now brings you a full report of that press conference.
This afternoon, I am delighted to be back in the TCI at such an important moment in TCI's history. The recent election here offers perhaps the most striking example of progress that has been made. And particularly the fact that the turnover in the election was over 80%, which would be the envy of many democracies around the world. And I would like to take this opportunity to personally congratulate Premier Ewing in winning the election, but also all the other members of the Assembly who have won the election and the significant contribution that they all individually, I know, will make in the years to come. And the closeness of the election, I think, augurs extremely well for democracy and accountability. And it's absolutely vital to have a vibrant opposition as well as a strong and decisive government. These islands have changed substantially since I was last here, and positively. And I have enjoyed full, honest and frank discussions with the Premier this morning, with the Leader of the Opposition, with members of the House of Assembly, with the Deputy Governor and the associated permanent secretaries. And I'm grateful to them all for sharing their thoughts with me. And I'm also looking forward to later on today meeting members of the clergy and business and community leaders as well. And it's absolutely critical that all of these groups work together as we face the challenges that lie ahead. Now, I also want to say that it is imperative to recognise the significant distance that has been travelled since 2009, and also the excellent job that the interim government did in successfully turning around the public finances and the economy, put in place a framework for good governance and strengthened the public service. The interim government also put the TCI on the right path to economic growth, with GDP growing by 4% in 2011. Now, it also needs to be said that whilst the reforms were difficult, some of them were long overdue. Now, I very much hope, working in partnership with Premier Ewing and his government, as I discussed with the Premier earlier today, we will see a continuation of this reform process and a further strengthening of the public sector. Firstly, to ensure a budget surplus and a sound record of credible and sustainable financial management, to improve the government's creditworthiness, to develop the economy, and one of the things we've been talking about is economic diversification, and to continue to modernise legislation. And I'm very keen to have a positive working relationship with Premier Ewing and his government to maintain economic growth and keep the public finances on track. Now, as you'll be aware, the UK government set out an Overseas Territories White Paper over in the year, And as part of that, we're very keen to continue to support the TCI and Premier Ewing's government in any way that Premier Ewing sees as fit, aligned with his particular priorities. But for now, in conclusion of my opening remarks, in short, it is over to the people of the Turks and Caicos and their newly democratically elected government. The future is in your hands. And if I could just conclude by saying that I am very keen to develop a constructive, positive, two-way working relationship on security, success and sustainability with the people of TCI and the new TCI government.
Good evening to the media, and I must first of all say a heartfelt welcome to Minister Simmons to the Turks and Caicos Islands, and also congratulate him in his new role in the capacity as Minister for Overseas Territories. As a newly elected government and on behalf of the people of the Turks and Caicos Islands, I must say that we are indeed thankful for the opportunity to be returned to self-governance and democratic rule. We indeed look forward to a relationship that is one of mutual respect, a relationship in which is facilitative of economic progress and sustainability, and also one that fosters good governance in the Turks and Caicos Islands. We look forward to fostering strategic partnerships that will enable Turks and Caicos and Turks and Caicos Islanders to move forward as a country and as a people, and to improve the standard of living of our people and remove undue hardships on individuals, families, businesses across the length and breadth of the Turks and Caicos Islands. We do indeed look forward to the opportunity to once again move this country forward towards social stability, social diversification, economic diversification, economic independence, and eventual self-determination as determined by our people when such time arrives. So I once again welcome you to Turks and Caicos, and I'm sure your presence here is indicative of the UK government's commitment to the Turks and Caicos Islands and in seeing us moving forward to economic sustainability and good governance. And we look forward to this good working relationship.
David Morris, I'm Turks and Caicos' son. Welcome to TCI. You said you were here before, Mr.
I came in a few years ago, yes.
Privately or personally?
No, as a...
we need to move the microphone.
Yes,
sorry.
sorry.
Do you mind moving the microphone this way? Towards the left.
My party that I belong to in the United Kingdom is the Conservative Party, and my party was in opposition for a number of years. And whilst my party was in opposition, one of my roles was a shadow Foreign Office Minister. And as part of my role as a shadow Foreign Office Minister, I visited the Turks and Caicos 8 years ago in my official capacity with the then shadow Foreign Secretary. Sorry? No, it was then a gentleman called Michael Angren. And we visited a number of Caribbean territories, including TCI, because at that time we didn't feel that enough was being done to cement the relationship between the UK and our overseas territories. And it's only that in May 2010 that the Conservative Party formed part of a new coalition government in the UK, that we were able to implement changes that are all set out, as you all know, in the Overseas Territories White Paper that, again, we can talk about a little bit more at this time.
Okay, what I want to ask you about, 2 weeks ago, my question surrounds back a very controversial issue. 2 weeks ago in the House of Commons, you said it was left to the elected government. But then just last week, you seem to have changed your position, and you said now it's going to call for a delay in delay will call for a change in the law, etc. And that the governor, as the Constitution says, will have the final say. From your vantage, do you support VAT on Turks and Caicos Islands or not?
Well, you won't be surprised to hear that this has been one of the main topics of discussion in the meetings that I've had during the course of the day, both with the Premier and with other political figures in TCI. I think the UK position, I think, is quite clear. The public finances in TCI in August 2009, when the government was partially suspended, were, to be blunt, a mess. And the interim government, in all its facets, including the consultation groups that existed here in TCI, have turned the public finances round and also implemented economic growth, as I said in my opening remarks. We are absolutely clear that the progress that has been made in the financial and fiscal framework must be maintained, and the targets that have been put in place to produce surpluses by certain dates must be adhered to. Now, within that context and within that architecture, the VAT, which will come into operation as it currently stands by the 1st of April next year, in my view, should stay in operation unless the Premier and his new government can find an evidence base for an alternative. And we've discussed that this morning. And if an alternative can be found on a sustainable, reliable revenue stream from another source, then I will look at it.
Dr. Ewing, is your government looking at an evidence-based alternative, as the Minister suggests?
Yes. As is clearly outlined in our manifesto, we decided we're going to come into government looking at alternatives to VAT, and we will bring those alternatives in VAT to the public for public consultation before making a decision on any of the options. With this in mind, with our few short days that we've been in government, we've had the opportunity to analyze government's finances, expenditure, revenue streams, and has begun to model financial projections going forward into the future. We are confident that the financial projections and the economic future of Turks and Caicos does indeed look bright. And we are confident that we can meet those revenue targets that were outlined by the Minister, even without VAT. But however, what we intend to do is to, what I have done, and so far discussed all day, to ask the Minister to allow us to defer VAT for at least a year, to give us time for public consultation with the alternatives to VAT and VAT, and at the same time analyze and assess our performance of the traditional revenue measures in tightening up revenue control mechanisms to see how we perform and reach those targets even without VAT or any other measures. And if we can show and prove that these projections based on sound financial projections are indeed acceptable to the FCU and the UK government, we would hope that they will grant us that that request to have the deferment of VAT and while we conduct this most important what we call trial of traditional trial improvement methods plus assess in public consultation on VAT and alternatives.
Yeah, Mr. Simmons, very last, Mr. Premier. Given what the Premier has just said, and in light of the groundswell of opposition to VAT from a very substantial percentage of the business community, and given what you obviously have heard and seen for yourself being on the ground, are you inclined at this stage to present the case for the deferral of VAT for at least 1 year?
No. I remain to be convinced that the deferral of VAT for any length of time is desirable, but as I said in my previous remarks, the Premier has made it very clear, both in his manifesto and in the remarks that he's just made, that it is a desire of his to move in that direction. I would prefer to see the VAT implemented whilst the ongoing analysis was taking place about alternatives. And at that point, if it was found that it was not necessary to have the VAT, the rate could be reduced, or it could then subsequently be reduced very significantly.
But
Or
okay,
then
hold
deferred
on,
from that
Mr.
point.
Okay, but you've just been there for a couple of months. Are you just said to us before that you intend to have a two-way, mutually agreeable relationship with them? How can you, in light of all you've heard, and I'm sure you've been briefed before you took office, if there's such a groundswell of support against that, why are you going to say absolutely no, rather than say, let me go back and consult, given that you want to have a two-way symbiotic? Why would you say such a hard line no before taking back what the Premier and the people have said and say, let's talk about it and then go forward from there?
There are several things I would say to that. The first is that I don't accept your premise that 100% of everybody on the Turks and Caicos Islands, I need it, but that's the implication I'm trying to make.
Substantial amount. I never said 100%.
That the vast majority of people are against the VAT. But one of the things I have been extremely impressed with by Premier Ewing and other politicians that I've spoken to is their determination to continue the prudent financial and fiscal management of the TCI, as we are back in the UK as well. And to that end, within that architecture, if there is an alternative, sustainable revenue stream that can be demonstrated that VAT is either not necessary at all, or should be at a lower rate, or should be deferred prior to VAT coming into play next April, then I have said that I will look at it. And that's the conversation that the Premier and I had this morning. I think the other thing I would just say is that, of course, I very much hope that we're going to have a very positive two-way relationship. But that doesn't necessarily always mean that we will agree. Friends will disagree. But ultimately what we've got to do is to find a way in this partnership to ensure that TCI continues to move forward, that it continues to use this opportunity for the reinstatement of democracy as a launch pad to drive economic development, to drive job creation, and diversify the economic base of TCI.
Premier Ewing, given the FCO's position on deferring VAT, will your government be moving up consultations to probably present an alternative before April 1st?
What we intend to do is we intend to do financial modeling of each of the strategies. We have to improve our revenue position. We will have several strategies that we will try to implement or bring forward to improve our revenue position. We will look at the impact of each of those strategies prior to April 1st, actually before within the month of December, and hopefully the minister could look at them and have them based on sound financial principles, current trends, realistic and reliable projections based on what investment opportunities we have on the table or proposals we have on the table, and to see what economic returns we will have, and then show that those projections actually either meet or exceed the revenue projections put forward by the FCO in our fiscal strategy financial framework. So once we could do that, I am still confident that we can do that and we will achieve. It's up to the minister who probably doubt that will actually reach it to show, to prove that we can do it. So it's for us to prove that we can meet those revenue targets and hopefully get the requests of deferral of VAT while we still engage in the public consultation on alternatives to VAT, because we still do need some kind of, going forward in the future, some kind of progressive, stable, broad-based taxation system that we can rely on, but we just can't jump in. We want to just jump into it lightly. We need to ensure that it's progressive, that it's equitable, that it's broad-based, that it's stable and predictable. Certain key criteria that we'll outline as to what a taxation system should be like. And we want the opportunity to do all of that prior to having VAT or any other forms implemented.
So just to clarify, you will present some alternatives before April 1st to get VAT deferred before you launch into consultations to actually put in a new system?
Most of what we're speaking of are revenue methods that are already in play.
Okay.
We just looking at strategies whereby we can maximize on those revenue streams that are already in play.
One of the arguments against VAT is that people are not prepared to change the way that they do business, or they're not able to do it, particularly when it was first introduced. They said there would be a considerable amount of time given to explaining to people and awareness about it. At that time, we didn't know when the elections were going to be. Now that the elections are so close to the time that VAT is actually to be implemented, do you think that we need more time? And if it's decided that VAT should be implemented, that there's more time needed for the education before it can be implemented, because right now it's being suggested in 4 months' time.
Well, there are a couple of things I'd say. Is that there has been a significant amount of A, thought, and B, consultation put into what is the appropriate way to increase the tax base, to get to the situation that we all want to see, which is prudent fiscal and financial management. And out of that very detailed and thorough process, the one piece of taxation that was left standing was VAT. Now, there are other options. There's a property tax, there's income tax, there's reduction in government expenditure. All these are options which governments around the world, including the UK, are having to wrestle with at the moment, these complicated and very difficult decisions. And I just want to emphasise one other thing in response to your question. Why is this so important? It's so important because sound financial management, prudent fiscal discipline are a prerequisite for economic development, economic growth and job creation. And particularly with the problems that TCI have had in the past, it is even more important that this fiscal discipline and financial prudent management is seen to be adhered to for a number of years to encourage investment to come to TCI.
Are you suggesting that there's not proper fiscal management on the behalf of all the businesses in Turks and Caicos?
No, but there's no doubt that the problem that the interim government inherited, which is why democracy had to be suspended here, is a major challenge. And the Premier Ewing and his incoming government, from the discussions that we've had, I'm sure, will do everything that they can to ensure that TCI's reputation is held at a very high level. But the financial management is a very key part of that.
What if VAT is a deterrent investment, as you just said? Suppose it backfires and deters investment. Or if investors find that having VAT will make it more expensive to go come. Have you factored that into your deliberations?
Well, I think that the VAT in itself is a tax that is used widely across the developed and developing world, and there are advantages of it. It's very difficult to avoid. It broadens the tax base. It provides a cash flow over the whole year rather than peaks and troughs. But at the end of the day, what is important is that the financial and fiscal framework and the hurdles within that in terms of the surplus that we've been talking about are met. And Premier Ewing and his team, I know, are keen to do that.
Can I just come in there? We're really pushed for time now. Can I ask, are there any other questions on any other subjects? The Minister, I think, given the time, will be able to facilitate a couple of one-to-one interviews, but we really need to draw stumps now.
Minister, you said the interim administration, well, the Governor and his team will continue with reforms in partnership with the newly elected government. Can you say what exact reforms you're looking at?
No, I mean the sort of reforms that the Premier Ewing and his government, he might have said a little bit about this in addition, of course. The There are specific powers set down in the Constitution that the government will remain responsible, for example, security. But there are issues that the Premier and his government will which are very challenging issues, will want to discuss and get to grips with. For example, immigration, belongership, driving economic diversification, which are matters for the new TCI government, not a matter that are held for the UK.
Can I be clear on this, that your program is to start it in April of next year? Honorable Ewing has suggested deferring it for a year to give the government time to come up with alternative sources of revenue. Are you saying that you're not prepared to give that year, give them a year to consider that? Is that what I understood you saying?
Well, what we have to find is if the VAT is not going to be implemented from the 1st of April next year, where is the revenue going to come from?
So essentially they have to come up before April, that's what I'm trying to say. Whatever ideas they have, they must table it before April.
Well, not just table it, evidence where that revenue is going to come from, because otherwise there's a danger that the fiscal hurdles will not be met.
And meanwhile, you will be implementing the process while they're trying to find other resources. You're going to be pushing ahead with your program for introducing that in April.
Well, it's not my program, it's the interim government that put in place
but then we have a government of the people now. We really, the interim government that's gone. I want to know, this government of the people, elected by the people, they're making representation on behalf of the people. And when you said originally, just earlier this month, that this was a decision for the government, we were elated to hear that. Now you've changed the tone. It's totally different.
Well, I don't accept it. It is a decision for the government, but the decisions must be made within the financial and fiscal framework.
Okay.
Last question. You hinted at a positive working relationship. Will that mean that more will be done by the UK to meet its responsibilities for things like security, border security, that sort of thing?
Well, the border security is one of the issues that we were talking about earlier today. There are other issues as well. I don't think there is sufficient, if I can give you an example, 2 examples, I don't think there's sufficient trade between TCI and the UK. And I'm very keen to find ways that we can work together to enhance that, both for the benefit of people in the TCI and job creation here, but also for our own economic recovery back in the UK. One of the other areas that we've discussed as well is education. And there are potential links between TCI government and Norfolk County Council in the UK, which education is part. But I think there are other things perhaps that the UK could do to assist in facilitating and enhancing education here in TCI. And certainly that's one of the things that I'll be taking back to the UK with me to try and establish whether we can solidify greater and stronger links to provide the education facilities here in TCI that are aligned with the plans for economic development and economic diversification that the Premier and I were discussing earlier.
Okay, thank you. Minister, Premier, we have time for some one-to-one interviews with the cameras, please, and then we will retire.
Do you want to do that in here? Or
yes, please.
I'm Lillian Boyce, and I'm happy you were able to join us for this special report from Sun TV. Be sure to join us again when we bring you news and issues that are important to you, directly to your computer or mobile device. Until then, thanks for watching.